Hi guys, it's Christina Del Rio Sylvester, and I'm looking horrible right now. Just got out of the hospital again. But I'm watching the news, and what I cannot understand while I'm watching this about, basically the hate crimes that are being committed every day against more and more women of color. But just for like a history lesson, I wanted to make sure that I was exact in what I learned in high school and middle school and even back to elementary school. And I was. But I looked at the data for those of you who are not aware, okay, and these sources are reliable sources. First of all, what I don't understand is this hatred towards Hispanic people, because Hispanic people, the Spaniards, when Christopher Columbus found the United States, when he discovered the U.S. in 1492, the Spaniards were already here. 1. 2. Okay, the African Americans were here as of 1619, documented. Okay, number 3. The Germans who came to the United States as refugees. So Trump saying, we cannot accept any more refugees, the country is full. The Germans came to the U.S. as refugees, struggling farmers, political refugees, religious refugees, stuttering from being hit by the taxi. But they were avoiding the German military and prosecution, and the United States took them in. This was 1830 to 1860, okay? And the Spaniards were here, noted 1492, and the Africans were here in 1619. We accepted the Germans here 1830 to 1860. And 1.5 million Germans came to the United States between these times. Okay, so that's, almost 400 years after the Spaniards were noted to be here, when Christopher Columbus discovered the country, and it's 200 years after the African Americans were here. Then the Germans came, and they were seeking refuge, and we took in 1.5 million of the Germans seeking refuge. Okay. But I'll go on. 1848 to 1928, the Mexican lynchings rose from 4% to 27.4%, which is basically the number comes out of every 100,000. So 27.4% of Hispanics or Spaniards were lynched after 1848 to 1928. The Germans, 1.5 million allowed in the country, seeking refuge from 1830 to 1860. The Spaniards were here in 1492. Africans were noted here in 1619. And, okay, these are all facts. These are facts from the New York Times, 2015, from San Antonio Express out of California, November 27th, 2017, and Corpus Christi Caller Times, October 16th, 2017. Those are just a few of the sources noted. I didn't want to steal their work. So we have Corpus Christi, Caller Time, 10/16/17, San Antonio Express, November 27th, 2017, the New York Times, 2015. Some of these facts were posted then. Okay, so from 1882 to 1968, 3,446 African Americans were lynched post-Civil War. 1882 to 1968, post-Civil War, 3,446 African Americans were lynched, compared to 1,297 whites. Mind you, the Germans came for refuge, political refuge, religious refuge. I giggle, and it's not funny at all, but I giggle because Trump, you keep saying we cannot accept any more. The country is full. But Germans were allowed in this country seeking refuge. 400 years almost after the Spaniards were here, and 200 after the Africans were here. We had plenty of room for 1.5 million refugees that were German. And after the Germans came here and we allowed them to come to the United States, lynchings, that's getting right over, of Mexicans increased from 1848 to 27.4%, and from 1882 to 1968, 3,446 African lynchings post-Civil War, compared to the 1,297 of whites. Over 5,000 Mexican Americans were lynched during this time. 1882, 1968, post the Germans coming 1830 to 1860. Spaniards were here 1492. Africans were here 1619, noted on record. The Spaniards were here when Christopher Columbus found the United States, discovered the United States. So, but anyway, from 1910 to 1920, 122 Latino prisoners were executed. Excuse me. No. 122 Latino prisoners have been executed since 1985. From 1910 to 1920, 373. Compared to, one example here from the San Antonio Express News out of San Antonio from November 27th, 2017. If a Hispanic man is accused of killing a white man, the Hispanic man is 4.6 times more likely to get the death penalty than if a white man is accused of killing a Hispanic man. 4.6 times more likely. Anyway, these are just some facts while I'm sitting here watching the news and not quite understanding how this country is built on immigrants and built on people seeking refuge. And the Germans were allowed to come in this country seeking political refuge, religious refuge, and after 1.5 million Germans were in this country, the lynchings for Africans and lynchings for Mexicans skyrocketed. But now we don't have time for the Mexicans, and we don't have time for Africa. We don't have time for people of color. Or space, room. We don't have any room. The country is full for people of color. But we had plenty of room for the Germans almost 400 years after the Spaniards were here. And 200 after the Africans were here. I don't know. Can someone explain this to me, please? Why this is even being discussed at this point? Why am I hearing this shit on the news? Can someone explain that to me? I was born here. I was born in Northside Hospital. Yes, my father was Hispanic, Mexican, immigrant. But I was born in the United States. And last year I was turned into an immigrant. I got my paperwork. But point being, I have African in my blood as well. It says more African than Caucasian. Okay, so I'm ran over by a taxi and all my rights are violated and this and this and this. But this isn't about me. I'm watching on the news and I'm disgusted because I don't understand how somebody... First of all, you're married to a Russian immigrant. An immigrant's an immigrant. An immigrant is an immigrant. Everyone's an immigrant. It's all equal. It should be equal anyway. But I don't know what makes a Russian immigrant better than a Hispanic immigrant. Or better than any immigrant's an immigrant. But the German immigrants, we allowed in this country seeking refuge almost 400 years after the Spaniards were here. Can someone explain this to me, please?